Hello, my name's Penny Highway. I'm a consultant here at Chadwick Knott. Thanks ever so much for your time in joining us today. Usually this time of year we would be coming out to visit you, travelling around the JLDs in the southeast region where we work, talking to lawyers and solicitors, newly qualified solicitors and trainees about various issues, matters, but specifically we'd be focusing on those coming up to qualification. So we got together as consultants and we decided that given current circumstances we can't come and visit you, we'd put together our presentations and put them online so you can access them when you like in your own time. Chadwick Knott is the largest legal recruitment consultancy in the country, and we have various teams across the country in various offices, but my team is based in the southeast of the country and we cover from Oxfordshire all the way around to Kent and down to the south coast. So when I started my training contract, I remember being told by my training partner that it would be a good idea to have a 2-year, a 5-year and a 10-year plan. I can't say I've ever been that organised, but one of the other pieces of advice he gave me, which I have always thought was really useful, was that I should be treating my training contract like a 2-year interview. Now that does sound quite daunting, and so sort of break it down, what does that really involve? First of all, I would say it involves impressing absolutely everyone that you come across on a day-to-day basis. So that could be the partners or the support staff. The partners of today were the paralegals of yesterday, and just the same, the secretaries, the support staff of today may very well be the HRs, head of HRs for tomorrow. So really important to make sure that every day you are treating everybody as you would like to be treated yourself, and that you are leaving a good impression in everything that you do. I would say to keep a record, keep a sort of file of yourself on a weekly, if not monthly basis. When you get to the end of your training contract, 2 years is a very long time and it's often difficult to forget, it's difficult to remember and easy to forget what you have done during that time. So if you keep a record on a regular basis of, for example, interesting work that you've undertaken, nice comments that you've received from clients or from members of your team, and perhaps if you have a billable, chargeable hours targets, if you keep a record of how well you've kept those, then all that information is there at your fingertips and can be used either perhaps at the end of a seat or at the end of, if you're coming up to qualification, if you have an appraisal. You may have internal interviews to be kept on at your firm. Or indeed, if you're deciding that perhaps it's time for you to move on to another firm, you can use that information to put into your CV, and also it can be very useful at interview. It's really useful to have a clear understanding all the way through your 2-year training contract as to where you are and if you are on track according to your plan and where you want to be. Now, obviously, that might change as you go along, but just to keep reviewing that and to keep discussing with your colleagues, with partners, your training partner, or your head of HR, whoever you feel comfortable speaking with, just to make sure that you really are keeping on track and that you're going to end up where you want to be after that really important 2 years training contract. When you come to decide your area of specialisation, where you're going to qualify into, again, that can be really quite a confusing time. And I would say, again, discuss that with as many people as you can, as you feel comfortable with. Just be, I would say, commercial about your decision making in terms of your practice area. Sometimes people come to us and they've got a very firm view that they want to be either contentious or non-contentious, but they really don't know which practice area specifically within that they want to qualify into. It is often helpful to have a look at the sort of market and see where areas are expanding or perhaps contracting. But I would just have a slight sort of caution about that. I do think that you are in this for the long term, and if your heart is really in one particular practice area, that you really need to follow your heart on that, because, as I say, it is a long-term decision that you're making. that said, if you come to qualification and for whatever reason you haven't had experience in a particular area, or there is not a role in a particular area that you're interested in and you want to stay at your firm, but then you realise after perhaps 6 months that wasn't right and that you want to either move on to a different firm or into a different practice area, then again, do talk to us, because we have great experience of dealing with those scenarios, and all is not lost. It is possible to move practice areas, and even once you've qualified and quite a long way down the line, you can move practice areas. So you want to be constantly reviewing your plan as to where you want to be, and part of that is to be conscious and aware whether you are likely to be offered a position at your firm on qualification in the area that you want to qualify into. It may be that you are conscious that the team that you are keen to join is quite small, or there won't be room for you to progress, that perhaps there isn't a nice sort of balance of different levels of PQE that you can learn from and be mentored by. And it may be that there just isn't a role for you on qualification, in which case it may be time for you to think about making a move. There are other reasons that people choose to move on qualification, practical reasons, very sort of positive reasons. They may have family elsewhere and that they've had to take a training contract out of the sort of area that they want to be in, and they want to move back to their sort of more family, friends location. It may be that you want experience in a sector that you haven't had a chance to have in your own firm, and that you need to move to a different firm, a larger firm perhaps, which specialises in that particular area, in order to get that experience and to qualify into an area that you want to be in. So when is the best time to be making that move, I suppose? If you're an NQ, we say 10 months before qualification is not really too early to start having conversations and to start looking around and to get your CV into shape. We can obviously help with that, and I'm going to just go on and chat about that in a second. But yeah, so usually, I mean, people are now qualifying at all points in the year. So, but if we talked about September qualifiers, our roles start coming out in the southeast about kind of April, May time. And that's usually when the firms have started to sort out their own internal trainees and see where their gaps are, perhaps. So from then onwards, we will be getting roles in. So if you're ready by then with your CV, then that's a good sort of benchmark. In London, our colleagues there, they tend to see the roles coming out a bit later. So if you are looking at perhaps a move into London, but you're not quite sure, you can kind of have a bit of a two-pronged attack, where you can be talking to us out in the southeast, in the regions, with a view to seeing if you can secure a role then, but being reassured that the roles actually haven't even started coming out in London yet. So but again, they can come out as late as sort of August for a September qualification, so you might feel that's a bit sort of tight. So if you have qualified though and you're looking for a move, any time from NQ to 5 is really 5 years PQE is really straightforward. You are not too expensive in terms of your salary. You've usually got some good experience behind you, so you're valuable to a firm. And in terms of a team, the politics of where you're coming in, which level, is not so much of an issue. So yeah, any time from NQ to 5 is really, really straightforward. After that, it can be a little more, not difficult, but there are more sort of things you have to think about. So, for example, lots of firms after sort of 6-7 years PQE expecting you to have a good network or a following. So obviously that can become a bit more tricky for some people. So how do you go about it? Well, LinkedIn has become a really popular platform now for jobs ads, but also for people to put up obviously profiles about themselves and show that they're open for opportunities, so that they can be contacted direct. Now obviously it's really important for you to have a good LinkedIn profile, and Liam's going to talk to you about that in a minute. Another platform is various job boards where you can post your CV. either in response to a job ad or just generally. I'd be quite careful about that option insofar as your CV is then public in the public domain. There's no confidentiality, particularly if you're trying to do this not with your firm finding out perhaps at this early stage. So you've got to be very careful about that, because as soon as your CV is up there, anyone obviously can see it, and also you will be contacted by all and sundry. It's not just legal recruitment consultants who will be phoning you. You will be phoned by all sorts of agencies, so you will be bombarded with telephone calls, so just be a bit careful about that. The other route is to engage the experiences of a legal consultant, recruitment consultant, and if you would like to do that, I would suggest that the best way of choosing who to speak to is to speak to friends and colleagues and see perhaps who they've used in the past. If it's if your firm knows that you're moving, that you speak to the head of HR perhaps to see who they use, who they instruct, and get a personal recommendation, not necessarily a company. It's really good to get an individual recommendation. And then I telephone that individual and just see whether you think you can have a working relationship with them. Ask them for a market appraisal, what's going on at the moment, what roles there are out there, and perhaps talk about particular firms or of the variety of firms that you have in a particular location that you're interested in. And you'll get a feel then for that person's knowledge and how you would work for them, because it really is a two-way work with them. It's really a two-way relationship, and you want to make sure that you're really comfortable with that.
Firstly, I'd like to talk to you about social media and using it to your professional advantage. Firstly, your general social media accounts such as Instagram, Facebook, etc. should be set to private. Employers do look at these. You should be deleting any old accounts you don't use as well. If you have any sort of concerns about not being able to voice your opinion online, you should keep two profiles. One for private use for friends and family, and the other to build connections. The most well-known social media tool for people within the sort of professional working environment is LinkedIn. Now, we all know it's a social network, but you should also have in mind that it's a visual CV where you can sell yourself for clients and employers. For instance, they can create a CV from your profile, so you should be using full titles in your descriptions in anything you put on there. LinkedIn also provides a wealth of industry news, and you can research other firms and teams on there. You can also search for career opportunities and join groups to develop and learn. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things that you can do on LinkedIn. And the firstly is you should become sort of very familiar with your settings on there. Firstly, that's because there is a public profile and a private profile, which every account has. And obviously the public one's for everyone, and the private one tends to be for connections or yourself. You can edit your settings to limit what is shown, and therefore what comes up in various search engines. You can also edit your public profile URL to make your profile easier to access and share. The default URL often has a string of numbers in it and looks untidy. If you do update it to just sort of your name after the initial LinkedIn info, it could be used then for your CV, your website profile, your business cards, blogs that you do, etc. Now, just a quick one on profile photo rules. You should be, of course, looking smart, show your head and shoulders, and smile. You should avoid sort of dating profile photos, selfies or stock photos, no cars, sunglasses, pets, etc. We work very closely with LinkedIn, and those with pictures like that are 11 more times likely to be viewed than those with just the default silhouette or not adhering to those rules. You can also go one step further and brand your profile with a background photo to add a bit of personality. One thing that quite a lot of people do is adding the banner for your place of employment. Now, on your profile, you should always be keeping everything up to date, particularly your professional headline, your location, your industry, the education that you've received and the results that you've got. Essentially, you should make sure your real CV and your LinkedIn profile align. You should write a really good summary on there. This is where you sort of sell yourself, where you can expand on your specialities, experience, etc. You should also keep the language consistent. Use either the first or third person, don't flip between the two. Importantly, you should also use keywords with intent. It helps you be discovered in various search engines. If you're a commercial solicitor, talk often about commercial contracts or the various matters that you deal with and pepper it throughout your profile repetitively as you'll rank higher in results, essentially. Another important part of a profile is the recommendations section. Don't be shy. You should sort of go out there and ask for recommendations from peers, clients, your HR, etc. The easiest way to get a recommendation is recommend someone else and ask for one in return. Skills and endorsements are less important on the platform, but still a good feature and worth sort of investing a bit of time in. Now, the interests and groups section, you should be following your firm, your firm's competitors, businesses that you're interested in, a law firm you aspire to work for, and of course, ourselves, Chadwick Knott. A good way to keep up to date on market news and trends. It's a great way to find specific niche groups for areas of work that you're interested in. And you can join them depending on your field of work. Now, in using LinkedIn, you should share, like, comment on posts if relevant. You should create and curate interesting content. Share articles, books, conference participation, information on latest trends. Connect with people that you don't know yet. It's not about networking with an established connections that you have, but also about mingling with new ones. I want to talk as well about the market over the last year to 2 years. This is important as it's likely the most relevant set of circumstances junior individuals looking to qualify will encounter for the foreseeable after things have settled down with the sort of COVID-19. However, we do expect some changes to the market, which I will highlight towards the end of this. Generally speaking, it is good news. Law firms have been both reactive and proactive based on market trends, and there were junior roles out there prior to the recent shutdown. There are some that are still ongoing, and we are speaking with firms who are actively planning for NQ roles when offices do eventually reopen. Now, the sort of smaller or shrinking markets to highlight is, firstly, criminal law. As everyone knows, it's been a sort of a smaller area for a while with lots of restrictions, and there are limited opportunities here. Another area of law affected by change is the PI and ClinNeg market, which still does thrive, but it's generally all being centralised to areas in the southeast like Guildford, Southampton. So there are good options, just fewer and far between. In residential property, we are now seeing a few factors cause a slowdown in the area. Firstly, firms are cutting down costs. The market is also introducing automation quite successfully, and firms generally are starting to feel that conveyancers or paralegals are better suited to handle residential property matters under the supervision of a single or couple of senior individuals. So that, of course, is great news for clients and those pursuing a career as a paralegal or a conveyancer, but not so much for silex or solicitor individuals. However, there will always be wealthy individuals wanting their property work dealt with by silex or solicitors, so you will still see a range of firms in affluent areas that still offer this as part of a full service firm and really good quality work. Now, the competitive areas to note, commercial litigation, family law, and employment tend to be the top three. There's always going to be a variety of roles out there, but we tend to experience a large volume of junior lawyers expressing an interest in these areas, and law firms tend to comment that these areas are the ones they receive the most applications in. If these areas are of interest to you, I would recommend exploring other options as well, just in case. Now, safe areas to note, the safest area seems to be private client. The economy is forever in the limelight, whether it be most recently Brexit related, rising taxes, or even in light of the coronavirus situation. This has led to people wanting to either be better protected or smarter about their own assets. Add to that, there's always going to be the need for wills in the administration of wealth, property, etc., and it makes it a very safe option going forward. Transactional areas also tend to do quite well too. So corporate, banking and finance, although not every firm in the southeast tends to deal with banking and finance. Moving on to areas of growth. Something that is continuing to grow is the commercial sector. Regional firms are growing, merging, and offering an alternative to London firms at a much more accommodating price. And with the direction everything's going in, the commercial tech sector is an important offering at any law firm. With commercial property, there's always been setbacks to the area. The market crash, sort of 10 or so years ago, Brexit, etc. But commercial property tends to always bounce back, and firms are always keen to hear about good quality commercial property solicitors of all levels. Another thing to really note about the market is there has been a growth in developments of previously niche areas. Say property litigation, which is tended to be part of a commercial litigation team, has started to separate themselves into their own department as a sort of reaction to how the commercial property market has been over the last few years. We've also seen developments in farming and agricultural property management, etc., which has created or expanded residential development and agricultural property teams. GDPR fallout has seen firms recruit teams of professional negligence or compliance solicitors, and this is still an area of interest. A response to Brexit has been the growth of business immigration departments in the southeast. Contested trusts and probates has previously been part of private client or commercial litigation, and that's starting to grow as its own department at a number of firms. Likewise, court of protection. Now, addressing the sort of changes that we expect to see to the above in the light of the sort of COVID-19 situation, we have seen firms look to repurpose corporate lawyers into regulatory or restructuring lawyers, and we expect this area to grow quite a bit, dealing with unfortunate fallout for businesses. Likewise, employment law, we expect to see take quite a big influx of individuals with the issues at companies requiring that sort of work. Private client is always, as I mentioned, quite a safe area to go with, but it seems like it will be quite a highly sought after area for firms for obvious reasons. Now to finally talk about salaries in the southeast. For those looking to qualify, NQ rates range from county to county. Hampshire ranges from the early 30s to around 45,000. Sussex can go in the late 20s up to the early 40s. Kent about the late 20s to the early 40s again. Surrey about 30 to 54, and that's about the same really for Berkshire or Oxfordshire. Of course, these ranges depend on the firm, with larger firms tending to offer bigger salaries, and it can also, although not too often, be based on the department that you're in, with transactional and commercial areas tending to be at the top end of those brackets. However, of course, if you want to speak more specifically about salaries, I'd be more than happy to speak. So please give us at Chadwick Not a call.
Hi everyone, my name's Will Webster. I'm the latest member of the South East team here at Chadwick Knott. I'm sure you've had some great advice and a lot of good tips from Liam and Penny, and they've kind of left it to me to summarise a placement we've made in these pretty uncertain times. So obviously it's impossible at the moment not to address the coronavirus in some way, shape or form. Of course, first and foremost are the health implications, so obviously our best go out to you and your family and friends at this time. But of course there are the economic and employment difficulties it presents. Now these may seem like huge roadblocks and impossible to get around. However, I had an individual we were working with. We went through some live roles with her, possible firms to approach, worked on a CV and created a real synergy between what she was looking for and what the firm needed. She secured an interview, which was great. We went through all the detailed prep together, which she found particularly helpful, especially as she'd been out of the legal work for about 2 years. So the firm in question were adamant, based off her CV and her experience to date, that they wanted to get her in for a face-to-face, which was great. And this was pre-lockdown, of course, so we managed to get in before they closed the door on that one. The individual went on to have an excellent interview. And then literally the next day, all the schools closed, which is perfect timing, of course. The candidate has 3 children, one of whom was 2 years old. So instantly, as if the circling virus and uncertainty wasn't enough, now we also had to think about childcare. Thankfully, we had a locum in place at the time who was helping the firm with their workload in this regard. Proving team effort and collaboration is always valuable, especially for an agency like ours, as we had actually placed the locum there. So this allowed my candidates some breathing room, and from then on it was about keeping both parties in the loop, updated, confident, and of course trying to inject a bit of humour in the face of a very unique scenario. Ultimately, we were all in it together. I can safely say that the contract is on its way now. Terms have been agreed and with a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And no matter what the situation or scenario, things will change. I was talking with a senior individual yesterday and both of us were in agreement that people will come out of this stronger and more resilient. But nothing gives you quite the same level of pride and resilience as confidence as overcoming huge adversity. So this placement couldn't have been achieved by me alone. It was a combination of client, candidate and myself working together against the odds. And it's amazing what people can achieve when they work together. And this is what we endeavour to do here at Chadwick Knott with anyone who contacts us, to work together transparently towards a common goal. So please get in touch, whether it be about a role we've put up on LinkedIn, which remains updated daily and we see new followers every day, or just to discuss your options or what's happening in the market at the moment. We'd welcome the chance to speak with you and hopefully we can help you further. So look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again. Bye-bye.